and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and it's time for my Game Week 22 team selection video. Guys, we're going to crack on with some transfers and some captaincies in what will be a very interesting return to FPL. Guys, if you enjoy this one, drop a like, do subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get started. So starting off with our Game Week 21 scores, and 63 points was kind of average-ish, maybe slightly above average. We did get a small green arrow, but certainly nothing to shout home about. The captaincy worked out, going for Cole Palmer instead of Saka. Ended up being a really nice decision there, and the defenders did pretty well, but looking through my attack, it just was not a good week for my attackers as well, and I'm really gutted that I did go for Foden instead of Jota. It was so close, my decision between Foden and Jota. We even spoke about it last week, but in the end I went for Foden, trying to play the fixtures and the blanks a little bit better, and it turned out that Jota scored a lot more points. But I'm not feeling too pessimistic because Foden was a player I brought in for the long term. Same with João Pedro, my other transfer from Game Week 21. So even though these two players disappointed, and it is nice when your new players score points straight away, these are players I'm looking forward to seeing what they can produce in the future, and hopefully we can get a few more attacking returns from our attackers, because they did let us down a little bit in Game Week 21. Moving on to Game Week 22, we need to set up our team. We've got one free transfer and a whole bunch of money in the bank for us to spend. So that could be pretty fun. Let's start off in goal with Dubravka. Yeah, I'm going for Dubravka. I've got Dubravka and Turner. Turner plays against Arsenal, and we have got Dubravka against Aston Villa. And once again, I'm going to back Dubravka because I think he's more likely to get saves in this game. I don't necessarily think that Newcastle will keep a clean sheet, although they're definitely due one. I just think that the saves that Dubravka makes is always really useful. So let's see what Dubravka can do. Can he pick up a bunch of save points? A clean sheet is unlikely, but it's kind of the best I can hope for right now. In defense, we've got Trippier still in our team. Aston Villa is an away fixture again for another Newcastle player. So double Newcastle defense. I'm not sitting here and saying I love it. I really don't. But after this game, the fixtures look a bit better for Trippier. Now, there's few good things about Trippier. They are the fact that Bayern Munich and their interest in Trippier seems to have cooled a little bit. So I think Trippier is going to be able to still be at Newcastle and play some of these really nice fixtures in the near future. So I am tempted to keep him. And even though he is flagged at the moment in FPL, the news looks good currently. It currently looks like Trippier is going to be available for this game week. So I'm not too worried about that one. It's just a case of whether he can produce anything against Aston Villa, and I'm not totally convinced that he can. And we've got Pedro Porro up next, a player I am a little bit more confident in. And maybe he won't get clean sheets, but we don't own Pedro Porro for the clean sheets. We own him for those attacking returns. Now, with Maddison coming back into the Spurs team, I worry about Pedro Porro and him taking set pieces, but he's been pretty good at them, particularly those corners. His delivery is really good, and he really is that extra attacker in this Spurs fixture. So I do think he could do well against the likes of Brentford. It's not such a bad fixture these days, Brentford. So let's see what Porro can produce. He's always a player that you've got to keep your eye on, and a lot of people own him right now for that reason. His attacking potential is just huge, really, isn't it? And in defense, finally, we've got Gabriel. It's a decent fixture against Forest, but I guess the problem here is he going to play? Now, we don't actually have confirmation about Gabriel quite yet. He hasn't been pictured training at time of recording, but I still do think I'm pretty optimistic that he will play. Not 100% sure, though, so maybe this could be a problem area. So yeah, the latest on Gabriel is that he hasn't been pictured training, but Arsenal fans in general seem to think that Gabriel will be playing this game week. So watch this space. Might be something that I do need to deal with for this particular deadline. In midfield, we've got Saka. I know a lot of people are down on Saka at the moment, and I can kind of understand why, but you know, I don't think he's a priority sell. He's a little expensive. He's super popular, and I do think if you are able to sell him, then maybe there could be some advantages there. But in general, I don't really see the point in selling him right now. So we're going to stick with him. We'll see what he can produce in this fairly decent fixture against Forest. So yeah, let's stick with Saka and see what happens next, I suppose. We've got Foden. Obviously disappointed last game week, but looked really good in that game. Again, I think he did around 0.3 XG and 0.3 XA in that game. So those were some good numbers for him. Certainly some promising things. We've seen a lot of promise from Foden recently, and he seems to be more nailed on than ever before. Really first choice in this Man City team. And with the likes of Haaland and De Bruyne perhaps not quite ready to be playing full games, I think Foden is definitely one of the players who should be getting a lot of game time in the near future. So very nice to have Foden in my team. Disappointing last game week, but feeling much more optimistic. Burnley at home. What a fixture. Is pretty much as good as you can get for Manchester City. And I think they could do some damage against Burnley once again. And Foden is likely to be involved in that. Now, next up, we've got Brennan Johnson, a player I'm a little bit disappointed with at the moment. Last game week, obviously blanking, but this game week, I'm worried. I'm worried, guys, about Brennan Johnson for the first time, and that's because Maddison is back. And I think with Maddison being back in the Spurs team, I think Johnson is probably the first player to drop out. Now, you could also say that maybe Richarlison or Werner are at a slight amount of risk at the moment, but I think Johnson was probably the first player to drop out with the return of Maddison. And then when Son comes back as well, Johnson has no chance of game time, really. And then even you'll have the likes of Werner and Richarlison. They'll be competing for that final spot in the Spurs attack as well. But yeah, I think Johnson's days are numbered as a kind of viable FPL asset, and I really do need to deal with this situation because he's a differential player as well. So if nobody else owns him and he's not really getting game time, then I'm just losing out on my own, really. And finally, we've got Cole Palmer, a hero from last game week. Few people will look to bench him against Liverpool, but I think this guy is just too good to drop, too good to bench. You just play him in every single game week pretty much, don't you? What a player, what a legend. Cole Palmer on the penalties, the star of everything Chelsea do in attack, and always an exciting player to own in FPL at that cheap price tag. So Cole Palmer love is still very much here. Love him for my FPL team. Up front, guys, we've got Ollie Watkins. First off, my three-man attack force. Newcastle at home. I know a lot of people are disappointed with Watkins recently, but he's actually been, I genuinely, a little bit better over the last couple of games. Like, he's been far more involved in kind of, particularly the shooting in dangerous areas over the last maybe 2 game weeks compared to, you know, how he has been recently. It's kind of the best his numbers have been for the last couple of months. It is very, very recent. So I do think Watkins maybe could see a resurgence, particularly when we look in the future. The fixtures do get a little bit better for Aston Villa. So I think I will stick with Watkins, although he's definitely a player you might consider sacrificing. I think he's actually showing a little bit more promise and a little bit of potential, which I quite like. So maybe he can still be a dangerous man. Now, Julian Alvarez in a video, the Buy Sell Keep Avoid video I did last week. I did kind of toy with the idea of selling Alvarez for a Haaland. I don't think that's the one anymore. I think Alvarez starts this game, was substituted early in the FA Cup, which did suggest a little bit of a rest, managing his minutes so he can start this game. And with De Bruyne unlikely to play a full game either, you would think that Alvarez, you know, starts the game, then maybe Haaland comes on for a bench appearance at the same time. Maybe De Bruyne is substituted off and Alvarez stays on the pitch. So I think a 90-minute appearance from Alvarez is actually pretty likely. And it's against Burnley as well. You know, we're talking about Alvarez who will take the penalties, will take a lot of set pieces if the likes of Haaland and De Bruyne aren't on the pitch. This could be really, really, really nice. And I do really like the idea of Alvarez for this game. It's a great fixture. He looks great for minutes. He takes set pieces, penalties. There's a lot to love about the central striker from Manchester City, particularly at that price. I think he'll be good for this week, but he is a player that I'm probably going to have to remove soon when the likes of Haaland and De Bruyne are back in full swing. But for now, hey, we'll enjoy him this game week. And finally up front, we've got João Pedro. Disappointed last game week, but this is when the good fixtures really start for the Brighton attackers. Now, João Pedro is coming off the back of a hat-trick in the FA Cup. He scored loads of goals in the FA Cup recently. I mean, to be fair, he scored a few goals in the Premier League as well recently. A really, really in-form player in general, coming in at that really cheap price. And a big differential for my team as well. Not too many people own João Pedro, so he's a player that gives me a lot of excitement in FPL. He's that differential I'm really backing at the moment to do really well. Luton is, of course, a really nice game. I know Luton have shown some promise, but generally speaking, Luton's defensive numbers are poor. They concede goals, they concede chances, and João Pedro is going to be the guy you most expect to score in a game in which Brighton are playing anyone, really. So João Pedro still nailed on, whilst Mitoma is unavailable on penalties. Everything's looking very good for João Pedro at the moment, and I'm very, very pleased to own him right now. Onto the bench, guys. We've got Turner. Not going to play him against Arsenal. We've got Gusto. A little bit worried about his availability. It's a game against Liverpool anyway. Charlie Taylor against Man City away. Again, not great. And we've got Salah, who is a really frustrating one because I kept Salah in my team because I was thinking, okay, yeah, we'll keep Salah because I think he is going to be knocked out, with Egypt knocked out of the AFCON, and maybe we might see Salah back in the Premier League sooner rather than later. Well, yes, that did happen, but what I didn't count on is Salah getting injured. I didn't expect Salah to be injured. Now, he's actually going to be out for a few weeks now, so he's definitely on the chopping block, and he's not going to be available for my FPL team for the next few weeks. So I need to think about that. This is a 13 million guy who, you know, is not gonna get any game time for several game weeks now. This is a problem. So with all that said, guys, I need to think about what transfers I'm gonna make. And starting off, we're gonna have a look at what kind of players I might be willing to sacrifice this week. And there's a few. There is a few. So first of all, Trippier in defense. I would ideally like to keep him, but he's very expensive, and I don't like this game week's fixture. But something tells me that maybe I should just hold the faith and maybe see what he can do in the game weeks after this one. So maybe we hold the faith in Trippier. Maybe we can, you know, move around another defender in order to bench Trippier this week, potentially. We've got Saka, who obviously at 9.1 million is a little bit too expensive, more than I'd like to be paying for. But is he a priority transfer when he's about to play Forest? Definitely not. Definitely not a priority transfer. So maybe not a player I would love to own long term, but certainly right now, I feel like you need to keep the faith in him. Brendan Johnson is obviously a sell because, like I said, I don't think he's going to start this game week. I think his minutes are going to, you know, reduce and reduce over the next few game weeks. And this is the problem area I need to focus on. So, yeah, maybe a midfielder is my biggest priority right now. Got Ollie Watkins up front. Again, similar situations to Saka. He's a little bit expensive. He's probably not a player I'd love to own long term, but at the same time, just not a priority sell really at all. So kind of happy-ish to just leave him in my FPL team. A few more players I'd be willing to sacrifice. Turner maybe could go for a different goalkeeper if I could think of one. Gusto, obviously with the potential injury in the short term. And it does look like Chelsea are also going to have a blank game week in game week 26. And, you know, they've got some pretty tough fixtures over the next few games anyway. So, yeah, with a potential blank in 26, could blank again in 29, is injured right now. Do I need to be reducing my amount of Chelsea and Spurs players? Yes, I do, particularly for game week 26 when these guys are going to be blanking. So what do I do? Do I sell Gusto? Do I upgrade him? If I do that, can I maybe bench the likes of Trippier so I don't have to play Trippier this week? I think those are definitely some potential to do something like that. We've got Salah as well. Obviously, I'd be willing to sacrifice him. I'm just not feeling confident in holding a 13 million midfielder for 3 game weeks, for him to maybe be back for the double game week in 25 and then blank immediately again in game week 26. After that, he plays Forest. After that, he plays Man City. And then after that, in game week 29, more than likely, he is going to blank again. So how many games are we going to get from Salah in the near future? Maybe we get part of the double game week. Maybe we get a bench appearance and maybe 1 start in the double game week if we're lucky. You know, Salah honestly will be lucky to get 90 minutes in a double game week. So he's essentially a single game week player in a double game week, which is no good. After that, there's 1 good fixture and it's Nottingham Forest. All the rest, from now all the way until game week 30, he is either going to be blanking or injured. That's not good enough for me. That is not good enough for the price tag that he is. So he's definitely a big player to sell right now if you did hold on to Salah. Like the experiment, hoping that Egypt will be knocked out. Yeah, it kind of worked, but at the same time, it's completely backfired because of that injury. And we now need to deal with that situation. And that's exactly what I think I'm going to have to do this week. So who am I looking to bring in? Well, there's no goalkeepers I really am desperate to get right now. So maybe we just stick with Dubravka after this game week. His fixtures look great. So I think Dubravka's going to be a nice goalkeeper after this game week to have. So happy with that. Nice and cheap as well. For defenders, Trent is obviously on my radar, and the same 2 defenders as have been on my radar for the last few weeks now, Walker and Estupiñán. These are defenders, kind of long-term targets for me, players I'd quite like to have in my team. Estupiñán is probably the standout here because certainly with Walker, if I go for him, it does tie me up a little bit in terms of, you know, which Man City players I can have. You know, you can only have 3. Do I want one of them to be Walker, or do I want to go a little, chase the upside a little bit more, go for some slightly more aggressive attacking players rather than just looking for clean sheets, because that's what Walker really provides, to be fair. And I don't massively love the double game week for Walker anyway. I don't think they're huge clean sheet potentials. You know, we're talking about Chelsea and Brentford, both teams capable of scoring goals in the big game. So I'm not hugely convinced by Walker. for those reasons. So I do think if I had to buy a defender this week, it would be Purvis Estupiñán. You know, obviously I'm a long-term admirer of this player, so it makes sense to go for someone like that. In terms of midfielders, there's only two I love at the moment, and that's De Bruyne and Diogo Jota. I wish there were some more options, I really do, but given the blanks that are coming up, it's really difficult to choose. We've got De Bruyne first of all. Some people worrying about his minutes, whether he's going to be available to play from the start against Burnley. Pep Guardiola seems to think that he is, going to be fine for 90 minutes. Maybe we can keep our ears to the wall for more news about De Bruyne, maybe. But, like, if we're totally honest, is Jota any more nailed on than De Bruyne? Jota's just played 90 minutes in the FA Cup. Will he be kind of managed a little bit with the League Cup final coming up as well? More FA Cup games coming up as well. Yeah, I think Jota is a fantastic pick. I still do. I thought last week. I think it again this week. But if we're talking about De Bruyne versus Jota, maybe De Bruyne just has that little bit more excitement. No blank in 26. Maybe help to structure my team a little bit better as well. So, yeah, love them both. Love both De Bruyne and Jota. But I think I'm leaning towards De Bruyne at the moment, to be fair. In terms of forwards, Haaland, not going to buy him realistically. Don't think he's going to start. I want to see him get some minutes before I put him in my FPL team, but he's certainly on the radar. Tony is also on the radar with a double in 25 and also no blank in 26 and no blank in 29 either. Guys, of course, if you want to know more about the blank game weeks and the double game weeks coming up, recommend the video I uploaded yesterday because we go through it all there. And we've got Darwin as well. Who, yeah, he looks okay at the moment, doesn't he? And we expect him to be on penalties. So maybe Darwin, maybe it's not over for Darwin yet. Maybe we need to think about bringing him back in, particularly with double game week 25 looking very likely for Liverpool. So, yeah, those are my targets. What are my options then? Well, I think the obvious move is to make a midfielder move of some kind because the Brennan Johnson situation is just not good for me. It's not good for me. I need to deal with this situation. I just need to just do something because I want to make sure I do have the full amount of attackers available on the pitch. And Salah and Johnson are scuppering that because neither of them, I don't think either of them are going to start. Salah won't start. Johnson probably won't start. So, yeah, we need a new midfielder, basically. It's as simple as that. I wouldn't be looking to remove Johnson quite yet. I think Salah is more obvious as the player to remove just because, at least Johnson has a chance of starting. And if, we get a random injury occur for Spurs or something like that, then at least we do have a chance of Johnson coming back into the fold. And I could be wrong about Johnson as well. What I won't be wrong about is the fact that Salah is injured and he is going to be out for a couple of game weeks. And, yeah, after that, Game week 25, maybe Salah's back, but I'm not totally convinced. I just think over this period of time, Salah is just not going to be worth the money that he costs, and we can sacrifice him and spread the funds, use it elsewhere, go for the likes of Haaland, De Bruyne, all of these players, maybe upgrade to Trent Alexander-Arnold in defence as well, just by selling Salah. So it makes a lot of sense to sell Salah. Really, really does, to spread that money out a little bit, because I'm pretty tired of having so much money either in my bank or on my bench. We need to spend this money and actually improve our FPL team, right, guys? I could go for Salah to De Bruyne. I think that's super, super obvious of a transfer to make. I think I'm more confident in De Bruyne than maybe some other FPL content creators are this week, and I do need a new midfielder. So, hey, maybe he's my answer. Could go for Jota instead. Maybe some of you guys think that maybe Jota is more likely to get more minutes. I think Jota is also a more explosive player as well. But there's no real reason why I can't get both eventually. And right now, Jota plays Chelsea and then he plays against Arsenal. So it's not two great fixtures. Where the likes of Man City, they play Burnley and then they play Brentford. And then they play Everton. So it's a really quite a nice run of fixtures here for Manchester City. So maybe the potential is more with De Bruyne, so long as he can get the game time, which, yeah, it remains to be seen. My final option is to improve my defence. And that would involve selling Gusto and bringing in Estupiñán. Now, the problem is, if I do this third option, it certainly deals with the Trippier/Gabriel problem, but what it does is it means that I can't move Alvarez to Haaland in one transfer anymore. I wouldn't have enough money to do the Alvarez to Haaland upgrade if I was to make the Gusto to Estupiñán upgrade. I have to choose one or the other. If not, if I do this Estupiñán move, I'm going to have to take a -4 next game week in order to get Haaland in. So the other kind of side of the coin is, if I do the Estupiñán move, is it maybe just worth me doing A and C? downgrading Salah to De Bruyne, freeing up a little bit of money that way, and then taking a -4 to do Gusto to a Estupiñán, and doing that will make sure that I do have the money in the bank to do the Alvarez to Haaland upgrade whenever it is that I need to do that, basically. It will allow me to do that, and it will, you know, solve all of the problems in my FPL team for this game week. But it would be meaning taking a -4. So that's a question as well. But I think for the purpose of this video, there is one move that is just so obvious, I just don't see how I ignore it. I need a new midfielder. De Bruyne is the hype midfielder right now with bags of potential, even if he is a little bit risky for minutes. So let's do that one, guys. Salah to De Bruyne. Let's do that. I think this looks good. Obviously, if we hear that De Bruyne is not going to be starting prior to the Game Week 22 deadline, then maybe I call on this particular transfer. But I think this works. We'll move Johnson to the bench, which obviously is going to be, you know, beneficial dealing with that problem. And, you know, I guess we hope that, you know, maybe Trippier gets something in that game and Gabriel starts against Crystal Palace, because that's the only other problem, because my bench cover for defenders is not very good right now. It really isn't. Only one of my defenders is not flagged, which is pretty crazy. But I think this looks good. I think this looks good. Now, if I was to bring in De Bruyne, I probably would be looking to cover De Bruyne with a captaincy on Julian Alvarez. So Julian Alvarez for the captaincy, because if De Bruyne doesn't start, it pretty much means that Alvarez is definitely starting and is on all set pieces. I don't think Haaland's going to start anyway. So yeah, I think Alvarez, if De Bruyne doesn't start, Alvarez is going to be a phenomenal pick. If De Bruyne does start, well, guess what? Alvarez is also benefiting because he's got De Bruyne creating for him. So it's kind of a win-win. So I know a lot of people will opt to go for Foden as their captain this week. I am backing Alvarez personally. I just think there's more avenues for him to get points. Maybe he hasn't been as explosive in the past, but I just feel more secure on Alvarez. I'm going to put the vice captain on Saka. Like to go for a slightly different fixture for my vice captain, even though the Man City guys are the standouts. But yeah, Saka vice captain, Alvarez captain. Could even go João Pedro vice captain, but yeah, I think we're going to stick with Alvarez. I'm so confident on his minutes. I don't think vice captain matters too much this game week. So that's going to be my team. I think this is looking a little bit better. Maybe that -4, though, is what I need to take me to a genuinely really nice team for this game week. So let me know what you think, guys. Should I take that -4 to just take that final step in really improving my team for Game Week 21 and beyond? Because, of course, Gusto is going to be blanking in the future. Maybe Gusto to a Estupiñán could actually benefit me in the long run as well as this game week. So, yeah, let me know what you think about this move and the second move as well. And looking at my AI projected transfers that I should be making, this is what the artificial intelligence algorithms think I should make as my transfer. Well, according to Fantasy Football Hub, Salah to De Bruyne is the move to make. Like, it backs me up. So this is really, really nice confirmation, guys. Looking at the predicted points for Salah and De Bruyne, you can see Salah not predicted any points for 22, 23, 24. And then even in 25, where both of these players double, because Salah will only just be returning from injury, the AI is predicting that De Bruyne is still going to score double the points of a Salah in that game week. That's pretty crazy. And then after that, Salah back to no points predicted because he's blanking again. And De Bruyne again ahead. So a really, really nice way to gain a lot of points is by bringing De Bruyne into my team and sacrificing Salah. The predicted points say I'm going to be way up on my points. So really nice to get that from Fantasy Football Hub. Guys, if you haven't checked out this tool already, I've left a link in the description for you guys to see what transfers you should be making according to the AI. It's really nice to get a second opinion, really, from the robot who seems to know it all. So guys, check it out. Help support the channel. Link at the top of the description. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. If you did enjoy it, make sure you drop a like. Do subscribe if you are new around here. We're going to be back for one more video tomorrow. We're going to be covering all the press conferences as well as answering some of your final questions in tomorrow's deadline decisions video. And, of course, please do go check out this video because it's all about the blank and double game weeks. You need to know this information because we've got blanks coming up. We've got doubles coming up. There's lots of possibilities, and we're going to narrow it down so you are ahead of the game with your information. Check out that video now. But aside from that, thanks so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.